Good afternoon, YouTube. Welcome back to Fat Cat Collections, another vintage watch show and tell. And this is another watch that was gifted to me just by a really nice older lady. I was helping her out with something, and we just started talking about, she had a beautiful grandfather clock. And I collect. I don't have a huge collection. I have four. I love clocks, and the thing about clocks, they take up a lot of room. So I've been looking for a project for another clock. I wanted to paint one to match my dresser, kind of take something vintage and maybe do something with some gold leaf or something like that. Make it kind of like a homage to one of these very ornate kind of Chinese styled or Asian styled clock. So we were just kind of talking. She had some great stuff, and she said, I said, I collect watches as well. So we got to talking. She was nice enough to give me a couple watches that she, there weren't ones that she considered had any value. She did have an Omega. Of course, she knew that with the, there was some more value. They're not going to give that away to some stranger. But she did give me a couple watches. Gave me a vintage Seiko, which does still have value. Again, only has value if somebody buys it. But this is the other one she gave. And this is like a very thin Pulsar dress watch. Very thin, very sleek, in pretty nice condition. Not a lot of scratches. It just goes to show you for an inexpensive watch where guys are, commenting that, oh, gold flakes off. I mean, here's a very inexpensive watch that is from probably the early 90s that looks fantastic. I mean, it's got some mild scratches, but very, very minor. This is definitely a guy who wore this stuff that probably didn't have a job that was very physical. And even the clasp on this, I mean, there's not a lot. I mean, really, it's probably not one he wore all that much. It's in pretty good condition. Now, as far as value on these are just basic quartz watches. I'm looking at something similar. This one here is model number, and I always snicker because the snob way of saying it is reference number. It's model number Y100-, and this is the 5799. I found something similar on eBay, the Y100 5059. Similar, this one's kind of beat up. Gold's really kind of scratched up. But just for argument's sake, I just hoping to find a little bit of information. But these watches are what you're probably going to find like in Walmart and like, in brick and mortar stores like that. Of course, you can find them online. I don't know if Pulsar, I probably should have looked first, but let me just go to their website, Pulsar Watches. And this is kind of like what I find fun about watch collecting is that if you are truly a watch collector, you appreciate all watches, no matter what the price point is. And let me just see, they don't even have a website, actually. I'm looking here, seeing if I can find an actual Pulsar website. Oh, there we go. Pulsar. Let's see here. Let's see if they make anything kind of comparable. I get an idea of the quality. I don't even know if they even have... Yeah, this is just basically a website to contact them. That's too bad. It would be nice to see something with their models here. But, well, let's just go to Amazon, see what... I know JCPenney. Here's JCPenney. Let's see if they have anything just on Amazon that might be comparable to what, a modern-day version of this Pulsar watch. Let's go dress. So definitely some women's watches on Amazon, and I'll put a link to the Pulsar search results here. But I'm not seeing anything quite like this right off the bat here. A lot of other brands come up, but these watches looks like from the few that do pop up here, you're looking about $50. Here's one for $136, which is more of a modern version, I guess. Looks bigger, but it is pretty cool. I mean, that this is something that's been produced and sold, and people have owned this and worn this. And again, it's not something that's going to knock your socks off. It's a basic dress watch. It doesn't have big crazy wrist presence, but I do find it interesting nonetheless. These are watches. I said in my other video, when I had different jobs where I interacted more with people, it's always fun to, especially people you see every day, is to just watch them just in amazement at how many watches you own, and just be able to share these different designs. I mean, very low profile. I think it's still very cool. Again, when you compare it to something like this by Invicta, of course I get more excited to wear this big, huge, gaudy piece. It's just, I mean, much more solid construction, of course. A lot more went into it, but they come from a different time. We're looking at a difference of, what do we got here? 30 years of advancements, 40 years of advancements 30 years? 30 years advances. If this is actually from the 90s, right? So, you know, it's still very interesting that watches like this were produced and somebody, you know, like this gentleman bought this and he wore it. And if you can only see kind of like the history of, you know, like where this watch has been, you know, what this watch was involved in. And you just never know what you're going to find, like in a secondhand store or even on eBay. You know, it'd be cool to, I know you can't, but to have, I guess, a story that comes along with it. For me, my only story is that, you know, it was her husband's and she didn't really know much about it. They didn't really have any value. She probably took them into a pawn shop and just had somebody look at them. They're going to say, hey, you know, this doesn't really have any value. You know, some watches like this, you know, remember, things, just we'll keep it to watches, have value to people who are willing to pay for it. So, you know, this isn't something that I'm going to throw on eBay and get $100 for, but, you know, you never know who might be looking for something specific that maybe was, you know, maybe their dad wore something like this and they're looking to get something back, you know, the similar. You just never know somebody's story. So I just think it is interesting, and I really appreciate anybody who gives me anything, and it is one for the collection. I don't know how many I have now, but it's something that, you know, this is something that I may wear once a year, if even that. Because, you know, for me, and this is where your personality comes in, this is not something that, you know, has a real wow factor. It's a very small dressed watch. It's meant to be subtle. It's not something that anybody's going to look at and say, oh man, what are you wearing? You know, unless you are a watch guy and unless you're used to having those kinds of conversations. It was really cool when I used to work with guys who kind of caught the Invicta and the Aragon bug, and we were, you know, not a lot of them, but you know, some of the girlfriends even got into it a little bit. You know, we would be constantly buying watches, and it was kind of fun to, hey, what do you got on the wrist today? You know, and vice versa. So something like this would have been a lot of fun to have. And, you know, wear this in there. You know, what do you got? Got a big 60mm Invicta. What are you wearing? A vintage Pulsar. So again, this is just, everybody's different in why they collect things and what they like, and that's okay. But I still think it's pretty cool, and it's definitely something that you know, I think it's a good looking watch. You know, but then again, it's, you know, for me, I am very open-minded when it comes to watches. So I don't really have a lot of specifications on it. It's small, probably about an inch by maybe 3/4 inch, very small watch. But you know, I mean, on a 7-inch wrist, you know, it still looks good. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's definitely so outside the box for me. This is not something like, I think this is probably the thinnest watch that I own now. You know, it is still really cool nonetheless, and I do appreciate the lady giving this to me. You know, it's something I don't really get out too much looking like secondhand stores, and you know, with the internet nowadays, you know, a lot of times people will go to like mom and pop shops, secondhand vintage clothing stores in hopes of finding something. But for the most part, people are wise to what's out there, unless you have something that is like a completely, like, let's just say for instance, you know, this particular watch, if you Google this, you don't find a lot of information. Let's just say Pulsar made one in solid gold, and somebody didn't kind of miss that, you might pick up an amazing find. But you kind of have to know what you're looking for and be pretty well versed. There's lots of brands out there. For instance, a watch I was looking at recently was from the movie The Irishman, and so there's a scene in that movie where he's, I forget the characters, just bear with me, but he's gifted a watch. I think he was drawing a blank here. He was Al Pacino's friend. Al Pacino played, what did he play? He played the Teamsters. I can't, drawing a blank here. Come on. He played, not Gotti. Why am I drawing a blank on this? I just watched it a couple weeks ago. He was playing Hoffa, right? And so, and you'll have to watch the movie, but in the scene, De Niro is gifted a watch, and I forget the brand name, but it made me, because I liked the movie, it kind of sparked me looking for the brand. And you could find the brand all over eBay. They're in that, you know, $80 to $150 price range, few a little more. This one that that he was gifted is a solid gold version, so they made them. So you never know what you may find in a vintage piece that, just like brands like Elgin, just like Invicta, has a history that was completely different than the way what they are now. It's just a lot of fun to look at watches from movies and try to add one to your collection. I'll probably get one. I did reach out to them. I'd like them to send me one, but you know, it is interesting to see how watch brands have evolved and changed. Some brands started off as trying to kind of get into that luxury market, and it didn't work out, and it changed hands and went over to, you know, to more affordable watches, kind of like Invicta. You know, they were making more I believe handmade pieces at one point. Now the Invicta of the original Invicta is nothing. They're two different. They just share the name. They're really totally different companies. But nonetheless, it is kind of cool. You just never know what you may find. But like I said, with the internet and our ability to research things very quickly, the only way you kind of get away with finding something of real value is if somebody missed something. So like I said, if Pulsar, you know, somebody might pick this up, let's just say it's with solid gold, and say, oh, Pulsar, search the model number and not really find anything on it, you might score. So you never know what's out there, and that's kind of the fun of, I think, of watch collecting. So always fun to get a new one to the collection. So anyway, guys, if you have any comments, drop them. I'm always curious to hear about your stories, and tell me what you think about this watch. I dig it. I think it's pretty cool. Again, it won't get tons of wrist time. It's a little different than my normal personality, but nonetheless, it's still pretty cool. So thanks for watching. Have a fantastic day, and take care.